and I today am going to have a bit of a chat with Maurice Catting. Maurice Catting is a shamanic healer and a emotional intuitive, and he's going to give us a little bit of an energy reading essentially for the planet at the moment. So hello, Maurice.
Hi guys, how's everybody? Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys are doing well and you are keeping yourselves entertained during this time. Um, as Bryony said, today we're going to do just like a little bit of a tuning into what's going on with the energies. I've got my Osho healing deck and I'm just going to tune in and see what the general reading and consensus is. So, one thing that we were just chatting about before, which I think is really interesting, is that because of the charge of everything that's happening right now, for a lot of us, it's triggering not just past life stuff, but stuff that's really held in the collective. So the way I would describe that is it's like the collective unconscious. It's like everything that's happened in human history is held in this pool of energy. And whatever hasn't been fully integrated or resolved comes up again. It's like a repeat of pattern. So during this time, during this really elevated time, we have this opportunity to, in some ways, reprocess some of those wounds, those traumas, those unintegrated emotions, and really bring them back into balance for ourselves and for the collective. And so there's a truth to be said around what you integrate for yourself is what you then heal for the whole. So it's really important to not discount the power of meditation, the power of processing, the power of doing your own shadow work, and prayer. All of those things combined are not just for you, but they're for everybody that's processing the same stuff. Because what tends to happen is you will be going through an experience, and then when you work through it and you come out the other side of it, you'll find that whatever gifts or keys have been handed to you sort of like at the end of that level of working through things, they tend to be the perfect fit for somebody else. I mean, this is, for example, you'll see this a lot in social media when somebody will have an epiphany, when somebody's worked through something and they've understood what something means to them, and they'll share that experience. And then it'll always be like, that's exactly what I needed to hear, or those words are exact formation of an idea or something that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. And you've summarized it in a certain way that allows me now to get an understanding of where I'm at the moment, and to make things easier to integrate them.
So by gifts, where people get gifts from?
Yeah, so I feel like there's definitely spiritual gifts in terms of, let's say you're at the end of a certain cycle, for example, and you're just on the cusp of opening up another level of awareness or consciousness, intuition, all of those things being extended. And I think probably collectively, a lot of people are sort of at that point right now, okay? So the last vestiges of that in terms of what's blocking that for people sometimes can be, there's just a little bit more inner work to be done. And sometimes, like, especially for healers, we can feel that with certain people. It's like they're just on the brink of like unlocking something really massively for themselves, but they're the ones holding themselves back. And so it's just that guidance and that awareness, bringing the direction to where that attention or where that healing needs to go, can be the key for like this huge quantum leap. And I definitely believe in sort of the 100th monkey syndrome, or whatever they call it, which is like when enough people do that, collectively happens as well.
Right.
So there's like a critical mass that happens when people are awakening, that it starts to unlock things like spontaneously for everybody else as well.
So when you say that people are opening up, is it a greater level of awareness or self-awareness or ability to connect that they didn't quite
Well,
have before?
yeah, the gifts are the things that happen to us that we don't expect. So it's like the little miracles that happen, it's the abilities that we didn't expect to have that become, I guess, start to become normalized. But it's not really for us to know or to say how it's going to happen, but it's when we're ready. It's usually when you're ready to let something go.
Right.
That'd be the easiest way for me to simplify that. When you're at a certain point in your evolution where you're ready to release release this identification of who you think you are in the world,
Mm,
like you've gone as far as you can down the way that you've been perceiving reality, and it's just not enough for you anymore. And that's when you usually starting to put those feelers out and bringing in the experiences to you that will allow you to kind of transcend and go to the next space. So everybody that's gone through, I guess, a spiritual awakening will have one of those stories. Usually it's like a Saturn return, or sometimes it's quite dramatic because it's like that ego death that has to happen in order for that huge expanse to occur.
mm,
So if we bring that idea to this year and this time,
mm.
um, all around us is ego death. Like from every facet, from every level of the structure of our society, because we don't have the answers. And when you put people in situations where they're like, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't know what's going to happen next, I don't have the security, I don't have the certainty, I can't rely on the system, or I can't rely on the routine that I've known, all we can do is face the ego and face the death of the ego and face um, the uncomfortableness of that
Yeah.
in order to let something go.
Mm,
Maybe that's just to hand over more trust.
mm,
Maybe that's to be like, okay, I'm ready to dive deeper. I'm ready to jump off a higher diving board than I was willing to before, because it's like, what have I got to lose?
mm,
What have I got to lose when everything around me is reflecting that uncertainty back to me?
mm.
It's like I can go through the anger, I can go through the frustration, I can go through the resentment, I can go through the fear, I can go through the grief, I can go through all those stages of loss, and then eventually I can come to the point where it's like, okay, well, we still exist, we still create our reality, we still are a part of this world. So once they get quiet, and once that tantrum has kind of subsided in a way,
Mm.
then it's like, okay, now I'm ready for something else to come in.
Yeah.
Before I might have been blocking it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And the people who are struggling the most at the moment, do you think it's because part of their lesson is learning to let go, and that maybe they've never had to sit with uncertainty before?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, if we kind of look at the inner child just wants reassurance.
Yeah.
The inner child wants some sort of authority figure to tell them everything's going to be okay. Okay, so if that authority figure is no longer something that you believe in, or if that system of authority is no longer something that you trust in to keep you safe, it's really easy to go into the fear and the blame game, and then to start to question everything. So that's like when the mental body has the panic attack.
Mm,
Okay, so I'll put it this way. Let's say I'm swimming in this pool of energy, okay? And it's this collective pool of energy of worry and fear and uncertainty. So I'm picking up all of that throughout my body. It's going into my nervous system, and then it's triggering my emotional body. And so then the brain starts going ding, 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 asking all these questions, analyzing everything, looking at the structures that are in place, trying to find the answers, trying to say, okay, well, if I do this, will I get this result? Or if I put my money here, will it still be okay? Or if I do this, like trying to skewer its picture of reality so that it can still feel like some sort of guarantee.
Yeah.
And this year we've been sitting in limbo,
Mm.
literally pretty much the whole year.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in Australia, we started the year with the bushfires.
Mm.
That was this huge shakeup. That was this huge energetic purging. That was this huge trauma
Yeah.
to kind of go through and to feel all of that loss. Okay. And then obviously, you know, COVID happened, and then this recession and all that sort of stuff happened as well. So that's again triggered all of this confusion, all of this, um, so many voices, so many opinions,
Mm.
and so much of like, okay, what is the truth? How do I find it? How do I, and if I have the truth, do I feel certain in it? I mean, really, when people are trying to find the answers, what they're trying to find is a feeling of certainty and a feeling of safety.
Yeah.
We use information to try to gain a sense of a foothold.
Mm.
That's why we want to know. That's why we want to know, okay, what's going to happen around the corner? That's why people go to psychic readers. That's why people go to healers. In a way, they're looking for answers, which is some sort of way of regaining a sense of control in a chaotic world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned the bushfires, and I was thinking about it recently how in Melbourne, particularly during the bushfires, we couldn't breathe in Melbourne. You know, we
Yeah,
couldn't go outside. It was the air quality was terrible, and
yeah,
now we have to wear masks. And again, you know, it's affecting us. So it's
yeah,
interesting that Melbourne has attracted that to happen again.
yeah. That's a really interesting analogy or thing to join the dots between, because if it's about breathing, it's about the life force and the lungs. Lungs also represent grief in, you know, Chinese medicine. So I think when we were breathing all of that smoke, we were doing a lot of releasing, and I remember seeing a lot of empaths at that time, and when they were tuning, I guess, into the collective energy of that, they were really feeling the loss and the sadness, and they
Mm.
had to kind of separate and release that for themselves as well, and kind of understand what is it to be okay with loss. Okay, so let me put it this way: what is it to be okay with death?
Mm.
Especially in the Western world, where we're really afraid of death.
Yeah.
And I mean this on different levels, not just the physical, but
Mm.
it's the mental, it's the ego death, it's the spiritual death, it's all of those things. What is it to be okay with death? What is it to be okay with when something is no longer functional the way that you're used to it being functional? How do you process that?
It's
So let's say that that death can mean different things for different people. And okay, let me put it to you this way as well. If you've done the work, you know, if you have really done the work, in some ways, yeah, you have the tools to be able to process what it is to be in a space
unknown.
of the unknown. You
Yeah.
know, but at the same time, like, we're all human, okay? So we're all going to be feeling not just our stuff, but collectively, like literally every day, these waves of energy going through, okay? And I still feel like, in terms of where we are right now, the energy's still building. It's still building. It's almost like, okay, 2020 has been really challenging, because if we look at sort of like the waves of energy that shift through our world, they tend to roll through, and they tend to have sort of a vibrational impact. And then, like any wave, it breaks, and then it sort of hits the shore, and it sort of diminishes, and then the next one comes through. Okay, so if you thought 2019 was challenging, you know, 2020 has been a whole other bag of chips, because the waves that I feel roll through, they're almost like tidal waves.
Yeah.
They really collect, they really build, and then just when they like hit a certain point, that's when they break. So it sort of feels like you go through one, and then there's a next huge one, a next huge surge. And so every time this wave comes through, it really pulls everything back. It pulls everything sort of through you energetically across sort of the matrix field. And then there's that release. So, you know, when you go through times when it's like all that tension is building and it can last for like a day, 2 days, sometimes a week. Some of these waves are lasting, I'd say, a week or two, in terms of like, by the time we finally feel that relief or that release, and we have that moment to breathe, and then something else is coming through. So I don't know why that is. Is it astrologically? Is it energetically? Is it just a lot that's trying to be shifted right now? Probably. Okay. So that's why it's so taxing on us. That's why it's so taxing on our psyches, our mental bodies, our emotional body, because we're energetically being impacted all the time. And I think everybody is, without necessarily always being aware of that. Sometimes people are just kind of more, you know, like rational, or just kind of more, they perceive the world from their mental body. So more from like the logic, that sort of thing. But because we're all in this collective soup, there's no way of really necessarily separating yourself unless you kind of do the work.
Yeah.
So again, if you're a pragmatic person and you rely upon certain assurances that you see in the world to be that thing of like, okay, everything's okay, you take that away from somebody.
Yeah.
And what do they have to kind of reorganize that? If you keep moving where the goalpost is, again, it's going to put that complication in the mind, and that sort of rationalization of like, okay, but I was counting on this.
Yeah.
And then that was going to make me feel like everything was okay.
Do you think
So it's really pushing that for everybody.
do you think that what's coming up at the moment, because just hearing you talk has made me realize that what are the things that I've found challenging this year, and what are the things that I've found surprisingly easy compared to other people? And with my business, for example, being festivals, and I can't run them, that's something that from the outside somebody would think that I've struggled with, but in fact that's been the easiest part of my year, and changing that, although it has taken me longer to look at rejigging my business, that's been a piece of cake to some degree. Whereas the things that have been challenging for me have been my daughter and homeschooling, and probably my relationship, and dealing with somebody in my house that's usually gone to work. And when I think about those two things that have challenged me the most, they're probably the two things that I probably haven't given attention to for the last couple of years, whereas because they've seemed easy compared to my business. So,
Right.
and then my business has had the challenges that I've had to go through, the ups and downs. And so on some level, it feels like that the things that have come up for me are the things that I actually need to give attention to. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting listening to what you're saying, that I wonder if the things that are coming up for people, whether it's their children, whether it's they're more annoyed about being locked down, or, you know, the uncertainty with their business, I wonder if that's because that's the thing that we actually need to give attention to within
Yeah.
our own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so cool that you're able to like to see what that is for yourself, because that's, I mean, I always say that to people, half of what healing is really just a shift in consciousness, an expansion of consciousness, and a way of being able to see the picture in a different way that doesn't kind of leave you stuck in a corner with your back against the wall feeling like helpless or defenseless. It's like perspective, perception, the shifting of that, and adaptability of perception. Okay, so yeah, okay, cool. One thing I wanted to talk about was and this is something personal for me, but I think probably some other people would relate to it. So before, when I was talking about how like this time period is triggering a lot of stuff in the collective, and I'd say this, maybe I'm saying this for myself, but maybe this is for a lot of other people that are empaths and healers and that sort of thing. It really brings up for us the save the world calling. Okay, so a lot of us get into this field of spirituality because we do want to be of service to humanity in some kind of way. We do want to bring consciousness and light and healing to people in some kind of way. And we sometimes don't necessarily have the confidence to do that in sort of the formats and the standards that already exist. So spirituality presents itself, and it's like, okay, you can use all that beautiful sensitivity that you have to heal people. Okay. Suddenly you found an outlet. Suddenly you found a way to kind of make the world a better place, not just for other people, but for you, so that you can see that light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, okay, if I get to use this gift to make somebody's life better, and then another person's life better, and then another person's life better, it's like that feeling of I'm having an impact in a way where I am directing the energy where I want it to go, which is towards the light, towards the world that I want it to be. Okay. You put people that have that within them, that innate desire to make the world a better place, in a situation where things start to either feel challenging or dire or scary or traumatic. And so that really starts to kick in, that save the world. And it's archetypal. It's almost like we step into those Joan of Arc type archetypes, or some great spiritual leader or this or that, where it's almost like the feeling of like, I've got to get the masses on board, I've got to protect, and so that is a really grandiose I guess emotion, or grandiose sort of feeling that goes through somebody. But it can come from the point of fear, and it can come from past life stuff as well. So for me personally, and this is stuff that I've been working on for myself, because I've been getting these really bad headaches, and I'm just like, what's going on inside of me? Like, what is my trigger? What is my fear? If it's not death, what is it about? And so for me, it's like a big trigger for me, and it's happened for me in my life in experiences where I've been forced to learn it, where I haven't been able to help people, where I haven't been able to save somebody, where I haven't been able to reach that person, where I haven't been able to make the change to impact that person in a positive way in time. Okay. That feeling of like, I've got to get it across the line. So I feel like probably a lot of people in the spiritual community are feeling that sort of sense of urgency within themselves. And again, I feel like some of it's probably past life. Some of it's probably like a spiritual lesson for them, in terms of like, okay, we all have a certain degree of influence, and then we all have a point where we have to let go and let God, so to speak. You have your voice, you have your platform, you have your ability, you have your consciousness. What do you do with that? And then at what point do you rest?
Yeah.
Because you can't save the world. You can't, there's like how many billion people on this planet? You can't literally go to everybody's door and save everyone. So it's like that feeling of unrest comes from a point where we don't let go. We don't just say, okay, I've played my part in this game.
But also, do you think that's on some level a deflection from looking within at their own stuff?
It's an aspect of the ego. It's very much an aspect of the ego. And it, like, and it's what they say, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So for where healers get in trouble, and I'm putting my hand up, where healers get in trouble is where we try to do too much. We take on too much of the responsibility. We feel such great responsibility innately that we don't let ourselves off the hook. And it's not just what we want as things to happen, or it's not just what we want to happen, but it's also the growth that certain people have to go through. And that's a really hard thing to put your head around as well. So if you have to lose somebody, if you have to experience loss, or you have to witness people suffering, if you have to witness people in loss and in pain and in the ego death, and that's part of their spiritual journey, if that's part of what they signed up for, if you interfere with that, you're doing not just them a disservice, but you're setting yourself back as well. And the universe it has a way of handing you your ass, because you'll realize that you're doing it, and you'll pay the cost of it at some point. So yeah, I mean, that's just an insight that I've been seeing in terms of being able to really let go and just allow. You gotta also not underestimate the intelligence of the collective, not underestimate the intelligence of each and every sovereign person to find their own journey, to find their own way of putting it together, to find their own meaning, rather than just assuming you have the roadmap for everybody, because you don't.
Assuming that you have the truth, which is subjective, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we probably need to wrap it up now.
Okay, I've just been on like a monologue. Like, I didn't even pick up my cards. I was like, now I'll pick up the cards. Okay, I've been talking for like, 45 minutes?
I don't know if we'll keep everyone's attention this long, but is there any...
You're welcome to edit whatever you need to.
Is there any last little things you want to add before we talk about the workshop?
I was just gonna say the workshop. No, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about the workshop.
So you're doing a workshop with us this September, Saturday the 12th. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so what I call it is clearing the blueprint. Okay, so I come from like a kinesiology background. That was like one of the modalities that I sort of started with in terms of being able to tune in and muscle test and that sort of thing, which I found really amazing and helpful. And for people that have studied that, they'll understand that it kind of is based on patterns and running sort of sequences through the body, and kind of collecting reference points of information. Okay, so this emotion, this age, and then putting it all together, and then and sort of flushing it out, if you will. Okay, so I think at some point, I can't remember how I did this, but I just sat down and I just sort of thought, like, why don't I just start putting my ideas on paper? And I drew, I guess, like a representation of my fields. So a little stick man, arms and legs. And then I just started drawing everything that was in my head at the time. So the emotions that I was feeling, the thoughts, the concerns, the worries, the people that I felt it related to. And I started putting all those things in as reference points of everything that I'm feeling, I'm currently processing. Because whatever we're processing, it's sort of like a soup of information that's in our field. And we're trying to find a way of just like joining the dots and neutralizing that so that we feel like it's integrated.
Yeah.
This is a way of doing that in a visual form. So you draw everything and you literally join the dots, like you put lines where you feel the information is stored in your body. It's completely intuitive. It's something that, you know, you start slowly and you get the hang of it and you feel how it works. You feel what resonates for you, and then you can make it as complex as you want to. And we can do all sorts of things. We can work with the emotional body, the belief systems. We can work with age recession. We can go into past life stuff. We can work with symbols. We can work with numbers, chakras, shapes, whatever you want. It's all a way of kind of integrating stuff.
So it's a bit of a self-healing process, is it?
Yeah. So it's a tool. And basically that's what I'm wanting to share and teach people is, like, this is something that you can sit down and do like first thing in the morning. Like some people like to journal as a way of just like downloading. This is another way of doing it. It's representative.
Yeah, I love it. And, you know, what our theme for our workshops have been, which is why I love that you're putting this on, is to give people tools in order for, you know, you guys to be able to help yourselves and tune into yourself. Because ultimately, when it comes to your own life, you are, you know, the ultimate driver of it. And the more empowered we can all be to be able to self heal, the better. So that's why I love this workshop. So, thanks for chatting to me today, and I really look forward to the workshop, and we'll put the details in, guys, if you want to be a part of it. And on the 13th, Maurice, also we're giving one-to-one healing or reading sessions as part of our Healer Hub online, so all the information will be here. So thank you so much, or will be, I think, part of this post. But thanks, Maurice, for being joining me today. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? Where's your details?
Yeah, sure. So you can contact me through the Disconnect Healing Space on my website, Facebook, and then just Maurice Catting on Instagram.
Awesome.
But thank you so much. This has been really awesome. I really enjoyed just having this conversation. It's like when we started, I was like, what are we going to talk about? And then it just was like, boom. So it's great.
All came out, and I had some realizations myself during it. So I hope that other people do too, because the themes of what is going on in, you know, your life at the moment, or what's been coming up this year compared to last year or the year before, you might go, oh, okay, this is what I'm meant to be working on. This is where I'm meant to have my giving my attention to. So that's what I got out of this from you. So thank you for chatting with me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.